Alrighty. Hello, everybody. I wanted to go ahead and talk about my literacies for our 3.1 assignment. So starting first with why I chose farming. So I grew up in a very community. With that being said, farming was a big kind of construction towards the experiences that I had educationally, as well as some of the connections I was able to make, both my academic and personal life. Farming functioned as the primary basis in the town I grew up in as quote unquote the only way to actually sort of make money, which as we know, there is a variety of different ways. There's a variety of different literacies that can be at play for your students. But I do want to say that I do carry these memories with me from where I grew up because they are important. They are who I am now as both an educator and lifelong learner. Speaking towards the idea of an educator, I have a quote that is based off of the critical race theorist, Ibram X. Kennedy, which I feel like is one of my many literacies as well. The acknowledgement of power and the disconnection between what that does both in the educational realm and in the personal realm within the world around us. As the quote states, as a scholar, I know that nothing is more useful than criticism to improve my scholarship. As a human being, I know that there's nothing more constructive than criticism to improve my humanity. I feel like this is a lifelong ideology and kind of the basis of, I would argue, of my philosophy, both in life and as an educator as well. It's the consideration towards the idea of what power does in terms of literacies and the construction of those as well. Again, going back to my farming example, if I had originally let kind of those literacies like of the farming capital farming basis be grounded in my philosophy, not only maybe would I be in a different career path, but again, it's acknowledgement towards who I am as a scholar. More so as well, a connection to the culture or to my culture as well as Borderlands La Fronta. I chose to make this connection as well because it's a very essential book that I view really helped shape a lot of my different literacies. In there, she talks about the universal application of the Hispanic culture as well as what that does in terms of creating these harsh binaries of um, stigmas around sort of the Hispanic culture and both of the educational experiences as well. Going back into education, as we all know, education is a driving force of my literacy. It's something I've always had passion for. It's something that I've always cherished since I was a little kid, which is my next literacy, my family. My family is my biggest literacy, my biggest motivation as well. I'm a proponent of somebody who their parents finished high school and had aspirations to go to college. However, life instances did occur that made them kind of switch their views, which totally fine. Again, I utilize these motivations and these frameworks as not only a construction towards my philosophy, but a construction towards why I do what I do and why I narrate the experiences I do. Again, speaking from somebody who's of Hispanic heritage, there is a bunch of disconnections and different power plays as well, just like in other marginalized communities and marginalized groups. In the Abram X. Kennedy article, he talks about the idea of what whiteness is historically from a historical materialism standpoint, as well as I feel like it blended well with our conversation of intersectionality. In conversation of whiteness, however, this is an article that I came into contact with during one of my last semesters at Fresno State. Um, the quote states, individualism, concepts frequently used to categorize American culture and commonly, excuse me, deemed universal or rationalized through implicit exclusion. It's the idea of power and what that does from a historical standpoint, even to the modern link now. Oftentimes we see that marginalized communities are lacking representation even in a lot of the different studies. As somebody who's a proponent and one of my many literacies, as well as the idea of what sliding doors, windows, and telescopes can be utilized within education and beyond that, it's a consideration towards students' literacies and who I am as a person and how those experiences shape me and my connection towards education and my field of study. In conversation with education or connection, excuse me, this is a friend group that I made during my last semester at Fresno State. I believe connections do afford you the ability to think both critically and from a literacy standpoint. I was very fortunate enough to come into contact with this friend group, and taking my last set of classes with them really helped for me to structure new and innovative ideas as well. This is also when I met one of my last English professors at Fresno State, who really showed me that connections do really help situate literacy as a whole and literacy of how they shaped me as an educator. In conversation with my placement as well, my RISE placement, I've had a very wonderful time. Oftentimes, the experiences that I have here really helped shape my literacies currently, and I'm able to apply both my past and previous literacies. Me and my mentor, Mallory Williams, always talk about kind of the instrumental ways that we could structure literacy within our field of education and within our day-to-day lessons as well, and what these sorts of notions do towards the shattering of the binaries of power and the binaries of historical silencing that a lot of students do experience within the K through 12 public education system. In conversation with a single story, what to end, one of my favorite quotes from The Danger of a Single Story, which is TED Talk that we briefly touched upon in our previous classes. When we reject the single story, we realize that there is never a single story of any place. We regain a kind of paradise. Again, going back to the idea of historical silencing and what that does towards the deconstruction of falsified narratives and falsified historical materialistic aspects of stereotyping of things like that. It's all instrumental in who I am as a person, the construction of my literacies. Of course, as we know, literacies are a very universal light, a very universal concept as well. And these were just to name a few. I do have a bunch of other ones, such as literacy can be my food taste. I love trying new food and getting immersed into different cultures, as well as music. Music for me is a large literacy. It just didn't fit in my little slideshow. Um, but music is a very big thing, and it's my main connection towards kind of the exploration of literacies, both inside and outside the classroom. Oftentimes, I feel like artistry is expansive towards the idea of what literacies do for a person and the connections we make as individuals and students. Thank you guys so much. I look forward to reading your guys' responses.